he put me out in some hallway, some room, a storage room or something like that, with this bass. And I remember playing the open strings. Yeah, 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 do, 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 do. That's all. And then he would come and check on me maybe the second or third day to see how I was doing.
Just open strings?
Open strings.
Just open strings.
I start people on that today.
Dormitory Glory Story! Hello, my name is Dajin, and today's episode is a very special one. About 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to interview bass professor, performer, man, all-around great dude, Richard Davis. Now, Mr. Richard Davis has passed away just last week, and after a couple you got to understand, this guy was a jazz legend, still is, played with so many greats, and I took for granted that 10 years ago, when I was at home for the summer, I just had a root canal, but I've been in touch with Richard over like the 20 years I grew up there, and he was a professor of music at UW-Madison. So I hit him up and asked if we could just hang out and chat for a podcast that I was working on about failure and about lessons learned from business. Being aware of who your friends are, who your mentors are, and who's setting an example that's a high bar for you to reach. Richard Davis is one of those people that was a constant inspiration, a constant ally. I think someone who can push you to the next level in music, in navigating race tension, in exploring blackness, which is something that I was trying to find my path in, being a black kid from Wisconsin. And I unearthed these interviews after a couple of conversations with other friends, Pawan Benjamin and my buddy Joe Norcross. And it was great to be able to re-edit these. And I want to present to you this almost 2.5 hours worth of interviews I have with Richard Davis, nearly unedited. And I was pretty young when I made these. I think not a good interviewer, but there's a lot of space in our conversation because he's at the time 83. And I had a great time talking to Richard, and he is missed. And I hope that if you also knew Mr. Richard Davis, Uncle Richard, Professor, bassist extraordinaire, that you also can smile in some of these stories. And perhaps hearing about his childhood can give you another side that you never heard or never knew about. All right, this is Dormitory Glory Stories, my interview with Richard Davis.
Don't hold back.
People usually don't give you that privilege. I knew right away I was going to like this interview.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an honor to be here and having this talk with you through relationships with my uncles and aunts, my mother, and definitely me. I've been sitting in your class since high school, and I actually remember the first I'll call it ass kicking you gave me when I was in high school, and it was spring break, my spring break, and I think midterms, around your midterm time, and you were teaching a saxophone class that semester, and I leaned over and whispered to ask my friend for a pen, and then you you're laughing already.
I know what you're gonna say.
I went and asked my friend for a pen, and then you said, "Who's talking?" And then a whole row of people turned back and looked at me, and I tried to fit in and turn around and look at but everyone behind me was looking down, so I said, the 16-year-old trying to make it, you know. And then I just said, all right, it was me. Let me just stand up. And then it was listening. I remember it was Art Blakey and the Jazz Messengers, and you said, "Who is this playing?" And I didn't know. He said, "Who's the saxophone player?" And I said, "I don't know." I knew who it wasn't. I knew it wasn't Joe. I knew it wasn't Train. I didn't know the saxophone player. And then you said, "Did anybody know who the saxophone player is on this record?" Guy in front of me raises his hand. I think he said Joe Henderson, but it was not Joe Henderson. But you said, "That's right." And then so you said to the gentleman, "Are you a saxophone player?" He said, "No, I'm not." And then you looked at me and said, "Are you a saxophone player?" And I said, "Yes, I am." And then you said, "No, you're not." And I was crushed, all because I wanted a pencil. So I went out. I remember the class ended. I went to Exclusive Company. I bought 6 Jazz Messengers records, and then I learned that
pencils.
You said 6 pencils, and I learned that Benny Golson. It was Benny Golson. I learned that solo because I was like, all right, this is obviously important, and I should know this. I shouldn't need a pencil to learn. So that was probably the first ass kicking you gave me. That was just like, okay, I'm 16. I can't come in hot like some, I'm hanging out with all these college students.
And you learned that solo.
Yeah, and I had to, man.
That's what's called tough love.
Tough love.
Yeah, because of that pencil, you learn that solo.
Because I can't control my whispering.
Yeah. That's a good report.
It's a good reporting.
Yeah, good memory for details.
Well, those moments, like, all right, I gotta step up now. Like, those moments exist.
Uh-huh.
What I guess when did you start playing bass, and when did you start falling in love with playing bass?
Well, I fell in love with playing the bass because I would witness bass players in the neighborhood theater called the Regal Theater.
Regal Theater in Chicago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the bass player would take a solo, and at the end of the solo, they would push their bass so to spin on the end pin, and the lights would reflect on the bass wood. And I said, man, that was so great. Plus, the bass was in the background, and me being a shy kid, that's where I wanted to be ground. And so I started playing the bass when I was 15 years old.
15?
In high school.
Okay. That seems to be pretty late, like in relative to how people start.
To how it is now.
Yeah. Was it normal to start? So can you say what year that is? Do you disclose your age?
1945.
1945. I don't want to see you on, E! Entertainment tonight. Say, Richard Davis discloses his age on a podcast.
Yeah.
So it was 1945 when you started.
That's when I started at DuSable High School.
Okay.
With Walter Dyett.
Okay.
You've heard that name before?
I haven't. I've heard you say it. You say that name before, but yeah, personally, I don't know the name.
Mm-hmm. Just yesterday, I did a show called, what is it called? Good Morning America or Wake Up America?
Oh.
For channel ABC.
Uh-huh.
And they showed a picture of Walter Dyett on the camera teaching. Yeah, he was the man.
Yeah.
He was the mentor, and everything that I teach now and the style in which I present it is 95% of what I learned from him, how he did it. And you had a better chance with me with that pencil episode than you would have with him. I'm kind of like shavings of him. Yeah. Quite a man, quite a teacher.
So did he get you practicing? And I guess, was it typical at 14, 15, I guess high school to start playing?
I think I can answer your question better by giving a generalization of what you're heading for.
Okay.
I didn't know anything about music being taught in grade schools or junior high schools. I don't recall whether there was any subjects taught in schools in that grade. I just remember in high school, you had a marching band, which Dyett was responsible for. You had a concert band, which was the big band, you might say.
Yeah.
And you had a jazz band. Now, if you would formulate your question again, I might be better able to answer it. What is your direct question?
Okay, so did you just find a bass and find a teacher?
I see.
Or
that is very direct.
how did you find your first mentor?
Okay.
That's more along the lines of it.
Well, like that thing in the local theaters was my impressionable years with the bass.
Uh-huh.
And then my cousin, a female, used to talk about me playing the bass. And I said, you like it so much, why don't you play it? And she said, women don't play bass. Well, I think on the last school day of the spring semester in my second year, my first year
Of high school.
right? I wanted to walk up to Walter Dyett in his room, his office, and say I want to play the bass, but I was too shy to go up there by myself.
Huh.
So I took my best friend with me.
Okay.
I lock it. I said, come go up there with me, man. And he went up there with me. And Diane looked at us, said, what do you want to play? I said, bass. I said, what do you want to play? He said, violin. He said, we don't teach violin here.
Uh-huh.
He was the violinist, by the way.
Okay.
Diane. And so then my friend had done his part by just being there with me. I was nervous going there.
Just to say, I would like to play.
And you would hear about him, how tough he was, how demanding he was. A lot of people just were in awe of him. And then you also heard about these people who had been in the band before you, like Gene Ammons, Johnny Griffith.
Yeah.
That's scary enough.
Yeah, right.
I remember when I was a freshman and I saw Johnny Griffith walking through the hallways.
Man.
He was a senior.
Man.
I turned the other way, man. I went, there he is. Let me get away from him. You know. So then Walter Dyett said, there's a summer program starting here for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
He said, you can join that program if you want to. So I was in the first summer program at that high school,
Okay.
1945. So it meant I went there every day. Can't remember for how long each day, but I was fortunate enough to start right away.
Yeah.
My cousin bought me the bass book that I was practicing from, and then I was in the school in the summertime, and he assigned an older bass player to give me my first lesson.
Okay. Like a junior, senior.
Yeah, he must have been 2 or 3 years ahead of me. Leroy Jackson. Never
Okay.
forget his name.
Okay.
And he put me out in some hallway, some room, a storage room or something like that, with this bass. And I remember playing the open strings. Yeah, do, that's all. And then he would come and check on me maybe the second or third day to see how I was doing.
Just open strings?
Open strings.
Just open strings.
I taught people on that today. And then I saw the next page was positions. The half position, HP. What's that? You're putting your fingers down. 1, 2, 4 on all strings. Then a scale.
Uh-huh.
And then a little melody.
So you're just going through the book at this point, just practicing under the tutelage of Jackson.
The first song I played was Lightly Roll.
Okay.
Yeah. You remember that?
It's a classic. It's a classic. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah.
So you know that.
It's a standard. I mean, that's before Oleo, before before Blue Monk,
Well, this
before
might surprise
Footprints.
you, but you're the only person who recognized that name.
Yeah,
I've asked that question of, yeah.
yeah. Of course, I recognize that.
Students that I never heard of that. I thought I was something then. I was hot stuff. And so
Walking up to girls like in the hallway, like, hey, bum, 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 bum.
what is your name? So I guess that was a little romantic part that comes in there too.
Uh-huh.
So then when the semester started, the regular fall semester started, he said, you know too much to be in a beginner's band. and you don't know enough to be in the concert band. So what I'm going to do is put you in a study hall by yourself.
Okay.
To practice.
Nice.
And the next period, you come and watch the concert band.
Mm. That's the next one up, right? So the
next one up.
Yeah.
So as high as you could go. And so then he said, after I was watching for about 2 or 3 weeks, he said, if you think you can play some of that music, play it. Well, by the way, I was supplied with a bass from the school.
Okay.
If you think you can play that music, play it. I said, wow. And so I stood in the section then, and I'll never forget what we were playing. Bolero 9 by Ravel. Is that by Ravel? I get them mixed up.
Yeah. Ravel's Bolero. Yeah.
And there's only one note I had to play. Do 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 do. And I never played in an ensemble. We had to look at repeat marks, capos, the segnos, rest, and all that stuff. I couldn't even find the first note, man. I was so nervous.
Mm-hmm. And you're looking at all these two guys, juniors and seniors.
Mm-hmm. But I finally got to be section leader. In my third year, I guess it was. I was the section leader of the bass section.
Was there a good, like kind of a competitive nature, or was your summer mentor still in the band? So he's like, oh, this is Richard. He's still learning, but he's cool.
I can't recall when and where he disappeared from that position. But when I got to the regular semester, there was a girl named Betty Dupre, who was on top of everything with the bass. Never forget Betty Dupre. And I said, I'm going to catch up with her one of these days. And there was another guy named Wilbur or something. I'm going to catch them all. I was practicing 8 hours a day, man. Especially in the summer months. And Walter Dyett, the way he taught, he had your mind working on it. I still have that book he gave us called Mind Power. He made us rehearse everything we were going to play in our heads. So everybody in the band room, in the concert band, was sitting there like this.
Just looking.
And he'd talk. And everybody was like they were being hypnotized. He was strong with that. And I remember one thing he said, there's no such thing as sight reading. Look around each other. He said, you've played all of it before. You just arrange in different order. So you walk around like, I guess I can get over that. He was, man. And when I became section leader,
in like 46 or 47, so after you're playing for like a year or 2 years.
Right.
Yeah.
I started thinking that I was Walter Dyett. And I was very strict on the section. Very strict. And I remember there was a girl who had the hots for me in the section. And I had been told that she liked me, you know. And one day she came to the section rehearsal and didn't have her rosin. She was looking around somebody like, loan me your rosin. I said, what are you doing? I don't have my rosin. I said, sit down. Man, I'm a shy kid. And so she sat down, and he had to notice her sitting down. He said, why are you sitting down? And I said, because
hand up.
She doesn't have the necessary equipment for a good rehearsal. And for me to say that even, man.
You're taking a risk.
He stopped and thought about it for a second or two. He said, okay. Next time I saw her, man,
she had extra rosin.
She had the rosin. But that's how he taught, man. And if you ask any kid who went to that high school, they'd say exactly what I'm saying. And they all admired the fact that he was so strong and tough that when he walked around the building and the students would see him coming, they put the cigarettes out. Captain Dyett.
Yeah.
And he just walked around the building. And they were more afraid of him than they were of the cop on the beach. And the principal, who was an Irishman, he hung out with Dyett, so he learned how to discipline him. Dyett would walk around with no jacket on, sleeves rolled up. Here comes Megan.
Like same thing. Prince Megan.
Smart man.
Yeah.
He knew how to control those kids because he learned it from Dyett. So Dyett was tough, man, and he was... but then there was one bass player who did not graduate at the usual age, named Carl Byrom, B-Y-R-O-M.
Okay.
Great bass player, man. And by that time, I had gotten up into the thumb position.
You're playing with your whole body.
Yeah.
I read all the notes. I know all the notes.
And Carl was in the hallway looking at us, me and Betty. He said, let me play that. He played as if he'd been playing it all the time. The reason he was an older student because he had bouts of TB. Didn't graduate.
Yeah.
In fact, he died about a year or two later.
Oh, really?
And he showed me everything, man. He told me who the great bass players were at the time. Milt Hinton, Slam Stewart, Jimmy Blanton. He knew Oscar Pettiford. And he was really coaching me and teaching me. Because he lived on the way home to my house. So we leave school and go to his house.
Listen to records and talk and hang out. And,
that's it, man.
Yeah.
I still have a manuscript that he wrote right upstairs. He would write out bass solo.
Like transcriptions and just get it.
He was like, I was at his house every day when he was sick. Every day. And the thing about that thing is that during Christmas time, I gave him some handkerchiefs. And when I saw him in the casket, he had that handkerchief in his lapel.
Man.
And I didn't want to go to his house anymore because I just couldn't face it. And his mother said, when I did go, his mother said, Richard, we never saw you after Carl died. And she said they'd given the bass to Leroy Jackson. He and Leroy went with me to pick out my first bass, a little blind K bass, in what they call Jewtown.
Okay, in Chicago.
Yeah, it was merchants were Jewish in this section of Chicago.
Uh-huh.
And that first bass, he and Leroy saw it. Say, this is the bass for you, man.
This is it.
$150.
What?
And they helped me bring it home. Well, that's I could go on and on with high school days and stuff like that, but I don't want to distract you from.
What's the? I mean, part of this is stories and seeing where the questions can come from those experiences. And one of the things that I'm pulling a lot from this narrative, the story, is the idea of mentorship and having, obviously a bass section of other bass players and people that you like. This music is a part of your life. It's not just something fifth period's over and then I'm going to study this just for fifth period tomorrow.
But Betty was the one who made me compete. I wanted to catch up with her, and she was the best at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think she must have been Creole or something in her background because she looked white. And we started taking lessons together downtown when he sent us downtown to these symphony guys. And
so he just had connections like over the city to say, like, hang out with these kids.
He knew what to do. He even sent me to the music school I went to.
Okay.
And Betty, what did you call a hot number?
Okay.
And guys were always pouring on her. And I hated that, man. I used to tell her, I said, you cheapen yourself when you let them do that. I was very mature for my age.
Yeah. You just needed the little bit of courage a year in to just say, hey, this is what it is.
This is what it is.
Yeah.
And she just laughed at me and said, have you ever had a girl? I said, no. And she laughed, because she was kind of fast.
Uh-huh.
And she did get pregnant. That slowed her down quite a bit.
Uh-huh. So you did become a better bass player after she slowed down. You had to send somebody.
The reason I knew that she was pregnant was because in those days, if a teenager would have an upset stomach and throw up, they're pregnant.
That's simple. That's simple.
You eat something bad, no. And that was her, man.
Was there you mentioned you hinted at like a black Irish dynamic within the school. Was that? Can you expand on that a bit?
Okay, the
or maybe it's just a Chicago, like a cultural thing in Chicago. Where you were living.
White person in the school was just one white girl. It's all black school, but teachers were different races. I had some of the best teachers, man, in the world. That's why I defend white teachers today, because I knew there was some who really cared about us learning.
Yeah,
and they were strict too. I can remember their names even.
Yeah.
I can't remember the names of ones who didn't pay us any attention. Well, we also had a black one. There. When we got to what they call junior high school, it wasn't a separate building. You weren't going anywhere. You just advanced into the 6th and 7th grade or something.
There's a different section of the school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, nobody wanted to go into her room because she was tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I was in her room.
Could teachers like hit kids or be more disciplinary? This is like the 40s, so I'm assuming a lot of rules about teacher-student, hitting hadn't been established yet.
Well, I remember the guy who was the gym teacher, physical ed teacher. If he caught you throwing snowballs in the schoolyard, he just wait till you came in. Wouldn't say nothing to you while you were throwing them, but you had to go to a line to go back into the school. Everybody went in a single line going back to the school for their classes.
Yeah.
And when I got the way he was, he said,
just called you over.
"Saw you throwing snowballs." Oh boy. Mr. Lucas.
That wouldn't be. It would.
He had an eye for who's throwing snowballs now. But he wouldn't say that to you while you're doing it. But he knew he was going to see you in that line.
Yeah. He was like, all right, no, have your fun. Okay, I hope enjoy it while you can.
Well, man, now that I think of it, this was in grade school. Yeah. Anyway, he said, hold your hand out.
Okay.
Bend the fingers back.
Oh.
So you can get to that part. He said, now, don't move. And he had what looked like an elongated tube where it must have been sand in it or something.
Okay.
And he come down on your hand, man. Whap. And you were glad to get through there. He only hit you once.
That's all he needed.
Yeah.
That's all he needed.
Yeah. But some of those high school teachers, man, they would encourage me and tell me good things and compliment me on my work and tell me I had a personality that would be my advantage to make it in the world. And they'd say, if you want some extra help with something, I have hall duty on at such and such a time.
Yeah.
Come to where I am for hall duty. I remember sitting down there, what was that woman's name? Marva Hill. And she'd correct my English papers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're able to find people just from being...
the little one with the green olive suit on and these little moccasins, short cut hair. Herrick. That was her name. Mrs. Herrick.
Okay.
Herrick.
You're squinting you made a boo-boo face when you started to describe her. Like something like this.
She had these little eyes that just look at you, And I just, Jennifer Jordan's mother was my 5th grade school teacher in elementary school. But Mrs. Herrick would send me on errands. So I was always smart. My work was always up front, always ahead of time or on time, And so I guess I could afford to go to the place where you buy these little things for laboratories.
Okay.
I remember her sending me somewhere in the 60s to buy these things that they use in laboratories.
Okay.
Because I guess she said I could afford to miss today.
You got an A on your last paper. Just go ahead. Do go whatever. Do whatever.
Well, see, the one thing she taught me, man, was I was talking one day in the class, and she looked over at me, and I looked down because I knew that she thought I was a great student. So when the class was over, I went up to her desk and I said, Albalaika, the same Albalaika.
This is your boy. Your boy came with.
Tight today. I said, he waited for me outside. So he waited until I finished talking to Mrs. Herrick. And I said, Mrs. Herrick, I said, I must apologize for talking and giggling today in class. And she gave me a response, man, that carries me today. You know what she said? Some days we are adults, and some days we are children. Nothing else, man. I walked out of there.
Shamed.
And Locke said, what'd she say? What'd she say? And I told him what she said. See, we had good teachers. And I remember a guy named Mr. French in high school. He was the assistant principal. Black guy. And Albalaika and I were late for class once. Albalaika's always around.
It's your boy. It's your boy.
And when you late for her class, as soon as that bell rings, she closed the door. She don't look down the hall and see if you're coming. Bell rings.
This is it. Yeah.
And so we knew we were in trouble. And we went to Mr. French. And he said, I'm going to take you guys to your class. He says, but don't say a word. And when she starts talking to us, I'm not going to say a word.
Okay.
That's part of you sometimes keep your mouth shut.
Yeah. It's like a social experiment on how to get.
That's it. And when we got to class, he said, she's hollering and screaming, all that kind of stuff. She was white lady. But she lives in a black neighborhood. Mrs. Harris, that's her name. And so we just standing there. And all of a sudden she said, I see what y'all are doing. That was a lesson right there, man.
Yeah.
What do? You don't say nothing, you just listen. So I can remember. I kind of write some of this stuff.
This will go into your book too.
Yeah.
So when I guess,
matter of fact, on a copy will go in my book.
Okay.
I'll just type. If you send it on the computer, I just paste it into the book.
So from, I guess, what was your home life outside of school, outside of music? What was that like in Chicago, and how'd you find? You obviously had pockets of friends, but like, you have siblings?
Yeah.
So how'd you grow up?
Okay, I was raised by, you might call foster parents, because my mother died when I was born. Out of 5 boys, I'm the last one. She died birthing me. But they took three youngest boys into their home. And the 2 older ones went to blood relatives' houses. Just talked to one yesterday.
All in Chicago?
All in Chicago, yeah. And in that same home were 3 other children. The one who encouraged me to play the bass, 2 females, and a male. The male was the oldest. And one of the females was the youngest. I never forget, she was 8 years older than me. I learned a lot from her. And she shared her candies with me. She always gave me 3 jelly beans. She gave the other ones 2. I got 5 peanuts. They got 3.
The small things.
I was her favorite.
Small things.
Yeah. She was quiet like me and very shy. So I guess because of those personalities, we kind of depended on each other. It was magic, man. The way she was with me. She played tennis. I started playing tennis. She was into horses. I got into horses. Her father was a trainer for some rich white people on the east side of town. So I kind of followed her. Good images. And I forgot where I was filling off to.
Did you have, if I could ask, did you have perspective on, it seemed like you found motherly figures, through school or through, your foster siblings. Did you, I guess from speaking with your brothers or siblings, like how well do you think you felt you knew your mother before, or just through them?
I mean, my birth mother died.
Your birth mother, yeah,
but,
yeah.
Never knew her.
Mm-hmm.
I would hear about her. But I had two great parents, man. The people who adopted me, they really formed my life well. And I admired and respect them. And I tried to imitate everything I saw my father do. I did everything he did. I admired him like that. Are we hitting on what you're asking me?
Yeah, yeah.
And I was the only one who did that out of the three boys. I knew everything he did, how to fix the furnace, how to hire workers to do work on the fences that he had built. By the time I was 12, he opened up a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
I learned everything to do in that restaurant, from mopping the floors to managing.
This being entrepreneurial and everything.
That's what it was.
Mm-hmm.
And he knew that I felt that love for him, and I knew he felt the love for me. I can't even remember what the other two were doing, but they weren't doing what I was doing. I wanted to know, who is this guy?
How much older are your other siblings?
Okay.
So you're the baby. You're the baby?
Say I'm 83 now.
Uh-huh.
The next in line, older than me, would be 84 and a half.
Okay.
And so on up the line, 85 and a half, 86 and a half,
okay.
87. We were all born within a year or so of each other to a 23-year-old woman that died. Too many babies too early.
Back to back.
No nutrition. 1930s.
Uh-huh.
No food in the house, I heard. And that's what made me feel, even today, if I'm around a female, how's your meal program today? Have you eaten?
Uh-huh.
Just making sure they
get
the food.
Yeah.
And some people don't understand that, especially students.
Mm-hmm.
And I explain it to them after they get to know me, so they don't think I'm crazy.
Take me to the cafeteria.
That's just the way I am, man.
Was your like your birth father just not in the picture, or what?
Not in the picture. Yeah. Not in the picture. And I think I met him when I was about 8. He was in our house where we lived. He came over there, and he looked white as anybody, blue eyes, straight hair.
Huh. And
he threw a lot of coins on the floor. You know how kids are when they see all these coins. And I looked at Mom and said, "Who's that man that they're giving us all this coins?"
This coin, yeah.
She said, "That's your father." I said, "No, he ain't. My father's in the kitchen." That was the association he and I had. We didn't socialize at all.
Uh-huh.
I didn't regard him as my father.
Mm-hmm.
No way. I understood he wanted to keep the name Davis, so he didn't allow them to adopt us. And the reason he kept us in Chicago, because he didn't want us raised in the South,
mm-hmm.
which is where he was from.
Mm-hmm.
Alabama, was it? Yeah. So I guess he had his good points in knowing where we should stay to be raised.
But in terms of the nurturing fatherly stuff, it's not, yeah.
When he died, to me it sounded like somebody I heard about who died. Had no reference to, being a part of that. And my foster mother, for some reason I felt that she thought maybe when we got older we would want to go back with them.
Uh-huh.
I remember she saying things that led me to believe that. I think she was afraid of maybe us wanting to, Never dawned on my mind, crossed my mind.
Never.
He, one of the brothers who is living now in Moscow, he wanted to get all of us back together in the same house. And it's only recently, within the last 7 years or so, I'd heard about him. I never addressed him on it. And when I got to know his personality, knowing he likes to run things,
likes to be the alpha. He's a the alpha. Likes to be the alpha. The alpha brother. Words. Yeah, it's college education. University of St. Thomas, class 2008.
St. Thomas in the Virgin Islands?
No, St. Thomas in St. Paul, Minnesota. Probably the opposite of the Virgin Islands.
Well, I told him one day in front of his wife, I said, Thito, you always want to talk about us going back together in one family house and all that stuff. I said, the problem with that, you never asked us how we felt about that. And he realized that I was on to him, that he hadn't done that.
Yeah.
I said, you can't assume that we want to go back there. Wherever it is. That's something you wanted to go. Then I said, well, did you ever go back there? No, he didn't.
He didn't? It was just an idea. Cart before the horse.
He's very sentimental, you know. Very sweet, tender-hearted, and all that stuff.
Let's talk about the. So you finished high school in 48. Good year. Is it okay? Good year.
That's the right year.
It's the right year. So you transitioned. So at what point did you know? All right, I'm better than Betty. I want to make a career out of this. I'm taking out. I'm taking out Betty's gigs. Let me call Johnny Griffin. I know he's. Let me call Gene Ammons. Let me see who I know. So, at what point did that fundamental shift happen where you're like, okay, this is
okay.
It's time for me to do something with this bass.
Well, even in high school, there was something going around where some concerts that were given by the city to employ groups playing in parks and all that stuff. I started there with Walter Dyett. I eventually ended up playing in his professional band.
Okay.
He had a band that would play ballrooms and dances and cabarets, and he hired me to play with that. I thought I was something then, playing with the band. And then I started getting calls to do gigs around Chicago, mostly cabaret parties. A cabaret party, I don't even know if it's fashionable nowadays. It was that people would come in with their own bottle.
Okay.
And the waitress would serve them a bowl of ice and glasses and all those kind of things.
Okay.
So those cabaret parties. You ever hear that? I don't think they bought the whiskey. Or maybe they could have an option to buy it. But I remember guys pouring whiskey out of these bottles.
Should I hold the mic up a little bit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good.
They're pouring whiskey out of these bottles. And we were playing for the entertainment. Then I started playing for the dancers. Getting this call, getting that call.
And you're like 18, 19.
19.
Still in high school when this started?
I graduated then.
Okay.
But it started picking up when I was 19, 20 years old. I had all these gigs, man.
Yeah.
I had to start writing them down.
Yeah. Get your Rolodex.
I remember one thing in particular that I began to have conflicts with gigs. I couldn't make all the gigs. And then I would tell the guy on the phone, I say, well, I got a name for you, a bass player. Try him. And my mother heard me say this. She said, Richard, don't give all your gigs away. I said, I can't do it, Mama. She said, well, I don't know what she said, but she let me know that
she thought you were just being kind of shy, Richard. Just give it. But
it's possible, yeah. Because there was some competition. And I remember one competitive thing happened is there was another bass player around town who played classical music.
Mm-hmm.
He lives in New York right now. And he and I were trying out for these different symphony orchestras, auditioning. Well, first of all, they didn't want to see us. Those days, they didn't want to see no black musician playing symphony orchestra. But I knew I could do the music because Walter Dyett told me to learn all the music.
Dun, 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 dun.
But that time I was playing in 12 keys.
You're right.
So he let me start playing in the symphonic orchestras. And I started learning all of the music, man. I spent days on those excerpts. And then I heard about this other guy, black guy. I don't even know what school he went to. And his mother called me up and asked me, which one of you are the best?
His mother.
His mother. Favorite thing, man. And she called me up and asked me, who's better? Sit down for her son. I'm going to get the spot or he going to get the spot. So what I told her? I said, he's the best.
I don't know what you're up to. I'm just going to tell you what you want to hear.
He's the best. And she said, thank you. Turned out he was not the best.
Yeah.
But that's what she heard.
You want to say, all right, well, we'll see at the gig. I'll see you at the gig, miss. Whatever.
So I was auditioning for a lot of orchestras during that period of time. And then I guess I got into an orchestra called the youth orchestra was the first orchestra I went. That was all high school students.
Okay.
That's another story in itself, too, about how I learned how to talk.
Uh-huh.
But when I got into college, I was in the all-city civic orchestra. That's a training orchestra for the Chicago Symphony.
It's a feeder, a feeder, yeah.
That's what it was, feeder program. You got all the right words, man.
Hey, man.
St. Thomas?
St. Thomas. Challenge yourself, change our world.
You must have some good teachers. So when I got into that, man, I worked my way up to being principal there, too.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't get a job, so I stayed there longer than the average student.
Uh-huh.
I was getting older than the average student because I couldn't go nowhere. And when it was time for me to audition, the guys who were auditioning would be putting up their papers in their attache cases. They didn't even want to hear me. So they saving time by getting ready to leave.
To leave already when you're just, hi, my name is Richard.
Yeah. And they would take me last. They did that in the place of saying, we don't want to hear no black musicians. That was a way of getting me out of the way.
Yeah. So as kind of how I get this experience, music is music. Good music is good music, or music is bad music. There's two types of good music. Yeah, good. Yeah. Music is. I read music is my mistress in high school. His biography.
Did I put that in Kirk's note? I should have.
Well, we'll add it. We'll go back. We'll add it in. But for you as a bass player, I mean, you obviously studied Lightly Row. Was one of your first works.
My first work.
One of your first works. And then studying jazz and classical. Was there a fundamental difference in, saying, okay, I got to practice 8 hours the summer day. I'm going to spend 4 hours on my legit stuff and 4 hours on the stuff I'm going to get gigs for.
Yeah.
So
I did plan it.
Yeah.
I budgeted at the time. So lots of time I would go in 15-minute segments. I maybe it was 20. I would cover this, that, this, and that.
In the classical spectrum.
Then I go back and do the same thing again.
But swing the ace.
At least 8 hours a day, man. I was crazy.
You gotta catch up to Betty or Betsy.
Yeah. She was my mentor. And I used to stare at Jimmy Blanton's picture. You know Jimmy Blanton?
Mm-hmm.
Jimmy Blanton was Duke Ellington's bass player who revolutionized how the bass is regarded as a jazz instrument. And Blanton died in 1942 at the age of 23 from tuberculosis.
I stared at his picture and tried to get into his mind looking at his picture. I just stare at it. And my mother would pass my room and say, Richard, are you okay? Uh-huh. She'd come back the other way and say, you sure you're okay? Mm-hmm. I was just staring at his picture. Eventually, I started writing to his mother, asking her questions about him. She answered every question. I did it. Sonny Rollins used to keep a picture of Charlie Parker in his saxophone case. And in the dressing room, he opened up his saxophone and say, "What should I play tonight, Bird?" The saxophone, stupid.
What? So your I guess transition. I want to talk about connecting with singers. I guess when did the gigs pan out to Feeder Symphony? Eventually you were like 30, and they're like, "All right, you gotta get out."
You got a good sense of time. I was about 30. Yeah. Are we addressing the symphonic background or jazz, or both?
I'd like to do both. More the transition from the symphonic to. I'd love to talk about your university education. When you said you went to the University of
Sarah
Vaughan. Yeah, you mentioned that a couple of times. So how'd you get that gig? And
when did I tell you that?
When we met last time, we were just hanging out. Yeah,
right.
And also you said it in your class when I've sat in and whispered for pencils more gently.
Yeah. Okay. How can I approach an answer to that? So, I left Chicago in 1954 when I was 24 years of age.
Mm-hmm.
I'd had all that experience with the civic orchestra. I had all that experience with playing around Chicago with different people, even Ahmad Jamal.
Oh, okay.
And Don Shirley, and this and that person, and so forth, and so forth. And I was very much into finishing school, so I was in college from 52. When did I graduate from college? I forgot what year, but I spent 4 years in college.
Okay.
And I remember going from downtown Chicago, driving my car on a, what they call auto drive.
Mm-hmm.
You familiar with that term? It's a road that leads from downtown to all the way to 8600 South.
Okay.
I remember going from there to the gig. I went to DePaul University, I went to Roosevelt College, and I went to Vandercook College. And I was a straight A student in all those places.
Uh-huh.
And the straight A didn't mean nothing to me. I just wanted to know, and I knew how to study. So I was just a natural. Matter of fact, even in high school, people used to walk up to me and ask me, could they see my course book? Your course book is where they put the grades in. They had heard about me. This is what he's doing. And they look at all those. In those days, the greatest mark was an S, which means superior.
Okay.
The next marker was excellent.
Okay.
I had all the S's in my book. But by that time, I wasn't even into grades. I was into learning as much as I could.
Just absorbing.
Man. I'm still that way. So then, I'm trying to stay on track with what your question was. Why don't you say it again? I think I'm getting wound up now.
How did you get into the University of Sarah Vaughan? How did your gigs lead you there?
Oh, I got you. That's a simple question. All right. So after I got to New York, I'm working with Don Shirley.
Sorry, so you left Chicago. You're 24. You left Chicago.
24 years old.
For New York.
Yeah.
Is that right? Okay.
Because there was a job waiting for me with a guy named Don Shirley, who just died about 3 months ago.
Okay.
And I worked with him for 2 years, more or less. And that spread my reputation around New York. Because people would hear me practicing in my hotel room. And they'd come up to see who it was playing. I'll never forget Ed Thigpen was one of them. Remember that name?
Yeah, I know the name.
And he said, man, what's all that stuff you playing? I'd be playing Kusavisky. All that phonic stuff. And then they would bring musicians up there to hear me. Percy Heath was one of them.
Cool.
He said, man, you're going to make it if you can do that and this too.
Yeah.
That was very encouraging. And Milt Hinton was very encouraging. He would take me around to places and people that he worked with. He said, Richard, play that concerto you played me the other day. And I would play, and they're not used to hearing a black person play that stuff with a bow. Yeah. They don't think black bass players can use a bow. Uh-huh. Well, I could. And so I never forget Milt for doing that, man, because he just told all of them, say, listen to this guy. Yeah. And so they would hear me play, and people would bring up music that they thought was very difficult for them to play. They're trying to stump me now. So you play this. I look at it and play it. I've been working on this thing for 3 years. I can't play it yet. But that's Walter Dyett, man. Drove you. And so then, after the thing with Don Shirley expired, then I started gigging around New York. Gigs weren't that great. Uh-huh. But
have you had some like just failure gigs? Like, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, what's a bad gig?
A bad gig was getting $11 for a night's work. Uh-huh. And then you're working in a place where you can't even eat a hot dog at the hot dog stand in an amusement park. And that was with the Silent Finnegan's band. And I could not get a hot dog. I'm two black musicians in this band, and they wouldn't serve me. Give me $11. So then that went on for a while, these little pickup gigs. Then I get a call from Sarah Vaughan's office.
There go the eyes.
Man. Uh-oh. The only reason I think I got that call is because her drummer, Roy Haynes, used to hear me play in Chicago with Ahmad Jamal. He liked Ahmad Jamal, and there I was, hanging out with this New York drummer. Wow, Roy Haynes, never forget that, man. And he probably was the one that recommended me. So I got that job.
What was the call like? And so you're late 20s, and you're...
I got the call?
Yeah.
27.
27.
And I knew I'd hit the big time then.
Yeah.
Sarah Vaughan. And guess who she had with her? Besides Roy Haynes, she had Jimmy Jones with her. You know that name?
Yeah.
Talking about harmony. He plays such harmony I never heard before.
Yeah.
And I started picking up on it. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget when he looked at me and said, where'd you get that idea from? I said, I got it from you. He said, yeah?
I really like it.
I would ask him sometimes, what car was that, Jimmy? What car was that? And he said, let me see. Then he tell you what it was. But he was playing it all from whatever was in his head. A lot of guys who play good harmony, they're not saying I'm going to play a so-and-so now with the so-and-so and so-and-so. They're just playing. What was that, Jimmy? Well, that was a flat 9 and a over suspended 12.
They hear it or they feel it first, and then it's just the mechanics of translating that
together, man.
Yeah.
So I was in good hands. Mm-hmm. And that was Sarah Vaughan with all that knowledge she had. She's running those cards.
What? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
She was a piano player, you know.
Yeah.
So she had all that harmony in her background. And then with these giants, I was freaking out, man. I was too nervous to play. For 3 or 4 nights, I'm just tiptoeing through the tulips.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I said, fuck these motherfuckers. That's why they got me here.
Right.
They think I can play.
Right.
Then I started stretching out. And I saw Roy Haynes look up like that. He had big eyes, you know. I finally relaxed enough to do my thing.
Yeah. So you think it was probably a couple gigs in before you were like, they hired me for a reason, and this is the reason. I'm not here to fill up space. I'm here to create with them.
So I had to think something about myself.
Yeah.
Then I started playing.
Yeah.
They were sorry they did that because I was all over the place. Mm-hmm. But those stories like that, let me answer this. I'll see what it is anyway.
All right. Yeah, you can go ahead. I just put this part out.
Right now I'm at an interview.
Ooh, and that concludes the first half, kind of the foundations of Richard's life, Mr. Davis's life, Uncle Richard. Can you tell the story when Miles Davis called you up?
Oh, okay. Miles had called me once before to work with him, and I couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
He called his second time, and he said, "Hey, Richard, why don't you go to California with me?" And I said, "Miles, I've stopped traveling. I want to come home and stay home.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't go." And he said, "Why not?" I said, "I told my wife I'm going to stay home." He said, "Man, wives understand musicians got to travel. Come on out here, motherfucker." I said, "Miles, I can't go." Then he says, "I hear you going out with that bitch Lena Horne." He must have heard I was going to take an 8-week tour with her.
Uh-huh.
And so I said, "Well, that's just for a short time. I'm going to do this little package. And then that's it." And he said, "How'd you like to wake up in the morning and she's laying in the bed next to you?" He's always talking that talk.
Uh-huh.
So I kept telling him no. And he kept trying to entice me to come. And he said, "Richard, if you come out to California, I got a bitch out there who will suck your dick underwater." And then when I told that story, I ended right there. And the students were wondering, did I take the job or did I not take the job? But I told them that I asked him, "What time does the next plane leave?"
Mm-hmm.
And the other answer I said to him was, "I found out that the woman got drowned." I'll leave it up and
Okay. Yeah. I'll pause it. Yeah.